When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject: Fishgeddon. User: PN1. Hosted March 12, 1997.
Ask anyone in downtown LA about where to buy produce, and you'll most likely hear about the Terminal Market on 7th. There's a good reason for it. Family businesses, big and small, have been hawking their freshest wares there since 1917, and chances are they'll be doing the same for years to come. What you won't hear about is Newton Fresh Market, even though it opened up around the same time. For generations, my family was one of many who rented stalls in Newton, which used to run along what's now South Birch Street, somewhere between Olympic and East 12th. It closed for good in 1982 after an event everyone present came to call Fishgeddon. Fishgeddon happened on a day like any other. I suppose that's how life-changing events work. I got up at 4 to go with Dad in the truck to pick up produce. In summer, we'd drive out to Antelope Valley to buy directly from farmers, and in the winter, we'd take the 10 to a wholesaler in El Monte. Seeing the sunrise over Los Angeles on our way back was pretty great compensation for waking up early. The rear of the market, where vendors entered, used to be fenced off on the Broadway side. Dad lay on the horn until Manny Gonzalez, who managed the market, jogged out to unlock the gate. More often than not, we were the first people on site after Manny, and he would shoot the shit with Dad while I unloaded the truck. All that sticks out to me about the period where I was running banana boxes back and forth is the phantom scent and odor of rotten eggs or sulfur. Dad smelled it too, as did Mr. Gonzalez, who was especially baffled as the only reasonable explanation was natural gas, except there were no lines anywhere in the market. By 6:30, the other vendors were on site, and it had seemed to dissipate. We forgot about it and got on with our work. The new arrivals were people I'd known since my teens. There was Mr. Lowenthal, the baker, a short, stocky man with bushy white hair at his temples. The Gorskys, a family of 7, including parents, grandparents, and 3 grandchildren. Paul plus twin girls, Cassia and Sophia. Cassia and Sophia were around my age, blonde and willowy, and it goes without saying that I was madly in love with them both. There was also Mr. Agawa, the fishmonger, who had been there longer than any of us. Just before the market opened to the public at 7, Dad sent me out to the truck to get something. I forget exactly what, and I jogged past Mr. Agawa's stall, where dozens of fresh fish were laid out on crushed ice. Out of the corner of my eye, just for a second, I thought I saw one of them move. It was very quick, but noticeable enough, I actually stopped to take another look. Mr. Agawa, whose back had been to me, must have heard me run up because he turned around. "Jason, good morning. How are you today?" "Oh, hey, Mr. Agawa, I'm good." I kept staring at the fish, waiting. "Can I help you with something?" Mr. Agawa asked, smiling politely. Nothing moved, and I was only too aware how crazy I looked staring at a bunch of fish. "No, sorry, my dad wants me to bring him something. I just got distracted by..." I gestured at the display. He chuckled. "That's how they get you. Be careful, or before you know it, you too will be running a fish stand well past retirement age." He winked at me. Just after 10, the sulfur smell returned, stronger than ever. Dad mentioned it first, then I saw customers and merchants alike looking around for the culprit. A second later, I heard a man's voice I didn't recognize say, "Hey, Samurai Deli, you know these things are supposed to be dead before you sell them, right?" After that, there was a short, sharp exchange I couldn't follow, interrupted by another, louder voice. "Chingao, this little bitch bit me." A collective gasp went up from the direction of Mr. Agawa's stand, then a woman shouted, "Oh my God," the final word rising into a blood-curdling scream. The crowd surged in every direction, pushing to escape something I couldn't see. Shopping bags pinwheeled up in the air as people were pushed hard, a few falling to the ground while others stepped on their backs in a desperate attempt to get away. The sulfur smell was overpowering now. "Dad, what's going on?" "I don't know, and I don't care, but we need to get far away from it right now. Cover your mouth and nose with your shirt." I did as he told me, the thin cloth doing little to mitigate the stench permeating the air. From the direction of the fish stand, a man in blue jeans and a bomber jacket burst through the throng looking like some kind of insane Mad Magazine cartoon. His eyes were wild with pain, an understandable reaction to what appeared to be a coho salmon chewing through his nose. I watched in horror as it bit through with an audible snap of cartilage. Blood gushed from the man's severed nose, now just 2 holes in the center of his face. The bloody coho fell to the floor and began flopping around. Just then, a logjam in the exit routes must have worked itself out because panicked customers and vendors alike started pouring out of the market. I then saw fully what was happening. Every fish in Mr. Agawa's stand was flopping around like the coho, some of the smaller ones actively moving toward remaining customers. A man who stood there in open-mouthed wonder was easy pickings for a handful of sandlands. Before he could react, a half-dozen of the inch-long fish flung themselves together out of a chest-high bin straight into that open mouth, a river of red flowing outward after them. The man gurgled, thrashing as the fish chewed their way down inside him. Dad and I saw the bulge pass through his throat into his esophagus, hands clawing effectively at it. He tore off his clothes, kicking off his underwear, just as the lump briefly appeared before his pelvic bone. With a final, drowned scream, the fish gnawed their way out his urethra, shredding his penis. He collapsed. Those bloody sandlands hit the ground and kept bouncing, flinging themselves toward Dad and I. That was enough for him. He grabbed my arm and pulled, dragging me with him toward the exit. A roar, followed by a sizzling sound, drew my attention, slowing me down long enough to see Cassia Gorski spritzing a can of hairspray into his Zippo lighter, frying a group of flounder, jumping in the direction of her family's stand. Sophia was furiously stomping on a perch whose comically large teeth gnashed in protest, morning light streaming through her blonde hair. "Are you nuts? Move your ass." My dad was again the voice of reason. We ran for the exit, joining the crowd of bloody, dazed people who had already taken over 12th Street. Traffic had been forced to a standstill. Panicked husbands called for their wives and vice versa. I don't know how long it might have gone on for if the black vans hadn't turned up. There were 6 of them, brand new without any badging or license plates. Men wearing yellow biohazard suits, their faces obscured by visors, emerged from 4 of the vehicles carrying flamethrowers. The occupants of the remaining vans wore suits and immediately began crowd control, directing survivors into groups. From there, we were taken to a warehouse nearby to receive medical care. I saw all the Gorskys present and accounted for, Manny too. Once everyone had been patched up, one of the suitsmen gave us a talk. He ignored all our questions and gave us a short, to-the-point edict which boiled down to anyone who tells this story to the media shouldn't bother buying any green bananas. They had us home by dinner, just in time to watch KTLA announce a broken gas line had turned Newton Market and everything in it to the ground. An official narrative was born and Fishgeddon was forgotten. Just another chapter in the secret history of this city.
Subject, remember me. User, AutoDR12. Posted, January 22nd, 2000.
If anyone were to ask me, I'd tell them it was Eminem who showed me the world behind the world. It would only be stretching the truth a little bit. Zooming out, I should really blame my friend Jason, since it was his copy of the Slim Shady LP stuck in my tape deck. But as it's not Jason's voice screaming, "Remember me" in my nightmares, Eminem gets the nod. 6 full months I listened to that cassette while delivering pizza around Hartford. 6 months of listening to a genre of music I have at best a middling appreciation for. You can understand why, just after New Year's, I switched to the radio. At least in my lifetime, Hartford has never been known for its quality radio scene. A couple years back, WHCN rebranded into a classic rock format that's complete fucking soul death for anyone with a functioning brain. The Rolling Stones put Satisfaction out in 1965. We need to move on as a people. That's what I did after having one too many perfectly good songs smashed flat by repetition. I started twirling that dial, trying to find something better. I found her instead. Who is she? A voice on the radio is all I can say for sure. One with a shifting accent. Sometimes she sounds more English, sometimes more Irish, sometimes a third thing I can't pin down. Her arrival is preceded by the same tune or jingle. When I was a little kid, my parents bought me a Fisher-Price record player that could only play these small plastic discs, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, Old MacDonald's, etc. The music before each broadcast sounded like that. Once it stopped, she'd come back and say 3 unrelated words in sequence. The first time I heard her was by accident. I'd scrolled a little too far past AM 880, stopping somewhere between 900 and 950, just in time for her to say, "Tablespoons, simple, wide." Then an address, North 1600th Road, Lecompton, Kansas, followed by the phrase, "Window closes in 25 minutes." The information repeated, music played again, and continued on a loop for 30 minutes, at which point she returned. This time, it was Hardly, Actor Hunt, 434 Maspeth Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. Her voice was without inflection, yet there was something underneath it that tugged at me. A sense of connection running deep into memories I could no longer recall, no matter how hard I tried. And I tried, believe me. From that point on, roughly 70% of my time out in the world running deliveries was spent listening to the nonsense string of words and places. The only thing that never changed, was the amount of time. No matter which place it was, the window always closed in 25 minutes. What window, I wondered. Late on a snowy Wednesday, the mystery woman finally named a place I recognized. Venue, clear, decline. 18 Lenox Avenue, Windsor, Connecticut. I was so surprised, I stomped down on the brake hard, turned up the volume to wait for the repeat. I couldn't possibly have heard that correctly, and yet, venue, clear, decline. 18 Lenox Avenue, Windsor, Connecticut. Window closes in 25 minutes. There it was. Windsor was just across the river to the north, 15 minutes in good weather, at least 20 in this blizzard. I had 2 hot pies in the bag, but there was no way to deliver them and get to Lenox in the time remaining. This was a dividing point in my life. I could do the job, one I liked and had been good to me over the last few years, missing out on the chance to find the truth behind this little mystery, or I could say fuck it, cross the river and see what happened. What surprised me wasn't that I made the unsafe choice, but that it was barely a choice at all. I pulled a U-turn and gunned it for the Bissell Bridge. Exiting off 591 onto Bloomfield, there were only 8 minutes left. I was the only car on the road. Snow falling so heavily, I wasn't even sure I'd be able to make it back to the shop, let alone finish my deliveries. I turned too hard onto Lenox and felt my back wheels drift. It didn't matter how gently I tried to steer out of the skid, the car was spinning out of control. I braced for the inevitable, a teeth-rattling whomp as the passenger side of my Acura collided with a chest-high snowbank at the side of the road. My heart was racing. All I could think about was the time, now 6 minutes. Fumbling with the seatbelt, I unclipped myself and pushed open the driver's side door, legs wobbling. I ran for 18 Lenox, half a block ahead. Despite the emptiness of the street, I felt as though I were in the middle of a crowd, being not only seen, but studied. The house numbers counted down to my destination: 24 Lenox, 22, 20, 3 minutes left. My lungs burned with the effort. 18 was to my right through a set of privacy hedges. The hard branches scraped at my bare arms, a reminder I'd left the car without a coat. 18 Lenox wasn't what I expected, although I probably couldn't ever have actually expressed what that was. It had caught fire at some point, collapsing in on itself. Snow was thickly drifted on the crooked crosses of blackened beams. 2 minutes. The hair on the back of my neck was standing up as if an electrical current ran through the air, that feeling of being observed easily 100 times stronger. As I stepped over the threshold, voices rose up, a soft chorus of urgent words I couldn't identify. Hallway floorboards creaked beneath me. From around a corner at the far end of the corridor, I saw what looked like a light and, throwing caution to the wind, ran toward it. What I saw when I got there was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Between me and the ruined kitchen was a translucent wall of whirling crystal formations turning inward upon themselves, blinking out of existence one after another. Outside the anomaly was the winter night which had brought me here. Inside was daylight, a calming golden color. 1 minute. With every passing second, more and more crystals popped out of existence, narrowing the door. 30 seconds. I didn't want to frighten my friends, make them think something had happened to me, but if I didn't go, well, I knew I'd always regret it. 20 seconds. The door was barely big enough for me to squeeze through. What would Eminem do, I thought. Taking a deep breath, I sucked in my gut and wiggled through the remaining passage just before it closed completely. I let out that breath and shouted to this bright new world, Remember me?
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.